Hello everyone and welcome to another casual review. Today I'm talking about Donkey Kong Country. This is just classic Super Nintendo 2D platforming goodness. Initially, the thing that stands out most about Donkey Kong Country are probably its striking visuals. The way, as far as I understand it, the way that they created these graphics where they were like pre-generated graphics, and so they were able to make such a unique high definition look at the time for the Super Nintendo, and it really stood out amongst other games such as like Super Mario World, for example. Nowadays, I wouldn't necessarily say that the graphics are mind-blowing, but they are definitely stylistic and unique, and I don't think the Donkey Kong Country graphics have been replicated in a genuine way ever since the series has ended. As far as the story goes, Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong's banana hoard has been stolen by King K. Rool. As far as I understand, I'm sure there's like more story to it in the manual or whatever, but we gotta go get our banana hoard back. And so we are traveling across this island in order to take down all the bosses that have taken our bananas. This is not considered an easy game, especially some of the later levels. The platforming itself can be a little tricky to like necessarily understand like where you can land. I do like how Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong are controlled, like it feels good to control them, but trying to navigate through some of these areas, trying to jump over certain enemies can be a bit tricky. I wouldn't say it's tough but fair. It's tough but usually fair is how I describe it. I mean, there are some levels that just are incredibly frustrating. I did play this through the Nintendo Switch Online, and so that does give you the capability in order to rewind or make save points. I tried not to abuse the rewind system, especially because my wife was watching the whole time and she'd give me grief whenever I did rewind, and so I rewound very sparingly, usually if it was like I was so far in the level and I didn't want to repeat the whole level, or I didn't want to start back at that checkpoint. That's, you know, I would rewind sometimes, but I did try to keep it a genuine experience without the frustration and the wanting to pull out my hair. If you are pretty good at playing this game, or you are abusing that rewind system, it really isn't like that long of a game. Typically, I mean, for me, it usually takes me between 2 and 3 hours, depending on how fast I'm playing through it. But it is a game that really warrants multiple playthroughs, trying to get all the different collectibles. And if you ask Cranky Kong back in his day, he was able to beat the game with just 1 life and under 1 hour. Yes, you can visit other Kong characters, one of them being my favorite Kong, Cranky Kong. And he basically like will give you some hints about like different levels, but he'll also quite frequently complain about like how easy kids have it these days. And he'll often break the fourth wall talking about like 16 bits. And he's a very entertaining character to go visit, to say the least, and I love how he like bonks Donkey and Diddy's head with his cane. There's also the voluptuous Candy Kong, where you can save by hopping into a save barrel, and then of course fan favorite Funky Kong, which he basically like transfers you over to other worlds that you've previously visited if you want to. There are also some animal friends that you can ride that perform like different platforming abilities. Like the first one that you encounter is the Rhino Rambi, and he can jump on like spiked enemies, he can ram things with his horn. He's very useful for finding like unique passages for like little mini games as well, because this game is scattered with a bunch of little hidden secrets. There are these breakable walls that you can normally break with like a barrel. If you throw a barrel at certain walls, they expose like a cave to play a mini game, but Rambi's really good at running into them as well. There's an ostrich which can kind of glide, kind of similar to maybe like the Tanuki suit in Super Mario Bros. 3. There's a frog that can jump really high. There's a swordfish that you can ride that can like pierce things in the water. You do encounter these crates with these animal friends, and part of the bonuses that I talked about earlier with like these secret mini games is if you collect 3 of these gold animal emblems, then you get to play a quick little mini game where you play as the animal and you have to gather as many of these tokens, emblems as possible, and it gives you a life for every 100. And if you are not rewinding in this game, you'll definitely want to stock up on lives as much as possible, level because, like I mentioned earlier, like this game can get pretty sweaty. Like it can be a little tough, especially if it's your first time playing through this game. It's not infrequent for enemies to just immediately like soar towards you from off the screen, and you don't have a lot of that reaction time in order to avoid enemy attacks. And so, like a lot of games of this time, it kind of requires you to play through the levels over and over again in order to master where all the enemies are and predict what dangers are coming ahead. Because if it's your first time playing through a level, they just really don't give you a lot of reaction time for things like projectiles and enemies diving at you. Another way to acquire these lives are in every single level, there are letters K, O, and G. And if you gather all of them, then you get a life. Now, especially later levels, some of these collectibles like the animal emblems and the Kong letters are just not worth the risk, in my opinion. It's kind of like, I do wish that the Kong letters maybe provided you 2 or even 3 lives if you collect them all, because it's like, hey, you can risk your life getting a 4th of a life, and the risk and reward just don't line up, in my opinion. And so, especially the later levels, I kind of just ignored getting banana bunches and Kong letters and these animal emblems unless I was super confident that I could get them without dying. And there are, the bananas that are scattered all over the place, and if you gather 100 bananas, they kind of work like coins where you get a life that way. I do really like the enemies that you encounter in this game. The main source of bad guys is from King K. Rool and the Kremlings, and these Kremlings are different types of alligators or crocodiles. I'm not sure what you would call them, but they all have like different features as well. Like you'll encounter ones that jump really high and you kind of have to jump your press in order to jump on top of them. There's really big buff Kremlings where only Donkey Kong can hurt them by jumping on them. Diddy Kong is too small and they'll just kind of laugh in his face. And so that's why it's like always better to play as Donkey Kong instead of Diddy Kong. There's enemies that like fire projectiles at you, but other than the Kremlings, you'll also be encountering just other animals like vultures that will spit these nuts at you, I guess they are. Little green beavers called naughties. And I really just love the noises that these enemies make whenever you destroy them. Like I love when you jump on a little naughty beaver and he goes, meow. And the sound effects are just so good, like the buzzing of the bees. And I guess this would be a good time to talk about just the overall soundtrack of Donkey Kong Country, because it is very unique, but it's also representative of the Super Nintendo capabilities because it's so echoey. It has that like echo tinny kind of Super Nintendo noise, but it is so well done. And a lot of the tracks in this game hold up so well even by today's standards. I love the areas where you're just like in a cave and you can hear the echoey drops of water, and then you have this tentative little drum beat. Or there's the underwater soundtrack is absolutely legendary, and it's something that I listen to frequently even today. But I would be remiss to talk about different levels without bringing up the infamous minecart levels where Donkey and Diddy Kong are riding in a minecart, and it's kind of like an auto runner where your only ability is to jump, and you kind of have to time your jumps with both long jumps and tiny little short hops, and the track is broken in all these different locations, and you have to time your jump like right at the end of the track in order to clear that jump. Other times, like Kremlings in minecarts will be going the opposite way, and you kind of have to like jump over them, and things get especially tricky if you are trying to collect all of the Kong letters and get as many lives as possible. Now, the first couple minecart levels, I think I have enough experience by now that I can probably clear them within like 2 or 3 tries maybe, but some of the later minecart levels can get pretty tricky. Another feature that I really like about this game though are the barrels that kind of like rocket you forward, and so some of these barrels just will automatically shoot you, and I love when you find like a secret barrel, or there's a level set up, like a curated part of a level that's set up where it just launches you zigzagging all over the place and you're just collecting a ton of bananas and you're just blasting out of barrels. But other times are a lot more time dependent where these barrels will move back and forth with maybe like a bee in the middle of them, and you kind of have to time your barrel launch in order to avoid the bee and get into the next barrel. and other times barrels will just revolve around like 360 degrees, and you have to time what angle you want the barrel to be when you launch out of it. And these are some of the times that can get particularly sweaty as well. But it is really satisfying when you nail these barrel blasts, and it just goes so quick, and you just feel so successful, especially with the sound effects of the barrels blasting into each other. I have frequently played the co-op version of this game. This time was not one of those cases, but there's like a 2-player mode, but it's more like you're kind of taking turns. Like one player controls Donkey Kong, one player controls Diddy Kong, but only one of these Kongs is playable at a time. And so it's like, hey, if Donkey Kong dies, then Diddy Kong can take over, or vice versa. Or if you're just like, this part is too difficult for me, you can give each other a high five and then swap who is actually controlling. The other player just kind of follows along. It's not even like a Tails and Sonic situation. Like if Donkey Kong is the playable character, Diddy Kong is not controllable at all. The player who's controlling Diddy Kong is just watching at this point. For single player mode, it just kind of works like you have 2 hits until you're dead kind of situation, because if Donkey Kong gets hit, you then automatically assume control of Diddy Kong. As far as I can tell, there's not too many differences between these two characters. Donkey Kong can hurt big enemies by jumping on them. Diddy Kong kind of like holds barrels in front of him instead of over his head. I don't know if that necessarily affects the game too much, but there's some slight differences. The boss fights are pretty fun. You basically just fight like giant versions of these animals. I think most of my trouble did come from the platforming levels rather than the boss fights, although the King K. Rool does give me a run for my money every time I do encounter him, because he just takes like so many hits. But his main form of attack is, if you've ever played Super Smash Brothers, he kind of like throws his crown in front of him, and you have to jump over his crown and then jump on him, and things do get a little tricky. He does like a whole psych out thing, and so it can be pretty frustrating when you're like so close to beating King K. Rool, and then he takes you down and you have to start the whole fight over again. So by the end of this playthrough, it took me about 2 hours to play through, and I used the rewind function sparingly, like when I just didn't want to start the whole level over again, but it was infrequent. But as far as like the completion rate goes, like I didn't get a lot of the collectibles that you can, so it said that I was only 60% done with the game. I imagine you could vastly increase your gameplay time if you are trying to shoot for that 100%, but I think this game really lends itself to that speed run and try to beat your record with the previous save file, because it's short enough that it lends itself to that. And I just think that the overall platforming really has some good flow in order for you to get moving, and as long as you're avoiding enemy attacks, projectiles, you are able to flow through the levels pretty quickly. It is a really unique game, and I do have a lot of nostalgia and fondness for the game because I have been playing this one for quite a while. I think instinctually I'm going to give this game a 4 out of 5. It's a great game. It's not without its flaws, but it's certainly one that's replayable, and I'm able to return to it over and over again. Well guys, that's it for me. Let me know if you have any questions or comments about Donkey Kong Country, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye!